Everyone. Next, we have GeoVax Labs. It trades on the NASDAQ under the symbol GOVX and is a clinical stage biotech company developing novel therapies and vaccines for solid tumor cancers and many of the world's most threatening infectious diseases. Please welcome back Chairman, President, CEO, David Dodd. Hi, David.
Thank you, Anna.
All right. So you recently issued a mid-year business update addressing the key programs in progress during the first half of 2024. So let's focus on those updates, which I'm sure it's very much of interest to both existing GeoVax investors and potential investors out there.
Sure. Thank you. And why don't I start out by just sort of framing not only our discussion, but it's been 6 months or so since we last had an opportunity to work together, and the listeners and the potential investors may want to have a sort of broader background. So just to put it in perspective, GeoVax is a NASDAQ company. We listed on NASDAQ at the end of September of 2020. And following that, we built our balance sheet and we in-licensed 2 products that were already in the clinic. Our goal was to catapult the company into clinical stage development. We were successful in doing that in 2021 through in-licensing with worldwide rights for all uses, a technology related to solid tumor therapy. That technology is referred to as Gedeptin. It's branded by that. And we'll talk about that in today's discussion. And we also in-licensed a phase 2 status next generation COVID-19 vaccine that was developed at the City of Hope National Medical Center. It followed very similar to the strategy that we were working on with our own internal development, but it allowed us to go from preclinical straight into 2 phase 2 clinical trials. And so that's what we really focus on today. And since that time, over the last several years, we've advanced the clinical development of each programs, and that'll be largely the basis for what I'll be talking about, because our first half business development focused very heavily on a recent announcement, which was an announcement from BARDA. The press release was issued on June the 18th. So a month ago today, we announced that we were the recipient of a BARDA award under the Project NextGen program that is valued at almost $400 million in support of a phase 2B trial, but evaluating our vaccine, which is referred to as GEO-CM04S1, versus an mRNA, an authorized FDA-approved mRNA vaccine, so a first-generation vaccine, in a 10,000 patient trial. So there'll be 5,000 patients on each of those. And in essence, we look at that opportunity as really being a catalyst for the growth and development of GeoVax overall. Because as you can imagine, a company that is around an 8 to 9, or let's say $8 to $10 million market cap, being supported by the U.S. federal government to the tune of almost $400 million, really ignites the growth and development of the company. And based upon that, we've moved over the last month immediately into the execution operational aspect towards this trial. So we're deeply involved on a daily basis throughout every day with our CRO, with BARDA, et cetera, in terms of all the elements that go into the rolling out of the first patients into this trial in the early part of 2025. So the program is clearly underway. We've already manufactured product in support of the program. So we're going full force, as you might imagine, in behind of this program. What we hope to validate, and the basis for BARDA including GeoVax in this Project NextGen program, is specifically, as they noted in their press release that they issued, that there's the potential, based upon the data we've already seen behind our vaccine, for being able to deliver a new generation of COVID-19 vaccine that is a broader response in a protective immunity, meaning that our vaccine thus far has demonstrated in the clinic the ability to prevent against emerging variants without having to reconfigure it, which is what we've seen with the mRNA. Thus far, we've shown protective immunity from the original Wuhan strain all the way through the Omicron XBB 1.5. So that's a real game changer in the utilization of vaccines relative to COVID-19. And the other criteria that were the basis for our award was that the durability of our vaccine right now is over twice, at least what we're seeing in the clinic, is over twice what we're seeing with the first generation. You typically are seeing around 2 to 4 months with the mRNA vaccines. In real life, ours thus far is showing 8 to 12 months based on the data that we're reporting from our clinical trials. So we're hoping to be able to validate that in this very large comparative trial. 5,000 patients will receive our vaccine, 5,000 will receive the mRNA vaccine. For us, it lays the foundation for being able to move everything forward as a company. We have 3 other phase 2 trials that we're largely funding already underway, 2 of which are among patient populations who have compromised immune systems, meaning that they have various medical conditions such as blood cancers or chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And as a result of those conditions, their bodies do not respond to antibody stimulation. That means they do not respond successfully to the mRNA vaccines that are currently already authorized or to the monoclonal antibody therapies. We have developed our vaccine to induce not only an antibody response, but also a T-cell response, with the latter being absolutely critical for people with weakened immune systems, because they need to rely on their cellular immunity to provide protection, and they're not receiving that adequately from the current authorized vaccines. And what we're seeing in the clinic is we're seeing very strong, not only antibody responses similar to what you see with mRNA, but also very strong T-cell responses, which we think will ultimately provide this almost 70 million adults in the United States alone the protection and immunity that they need to be able to withstand the threat of severe disease, hospitalization, and the risk of death. And with what we just heard last night in terms of again, another outbreak of COVID-19 for President Biden, there are populations who are either elderly or have weakened immune systems who need such a vaccine as the one that we have in the clinic. So we're very excited about this and about the other clinical programs that we have underway. So that was part of the announcement we made with the business update. The other was that we reported and gave some comments under Gedeptin. If you recall, Gedeptin is our solid tumor therapy. It's a gene-directed prodrug therapy. We've just recently, at the end of last year, closed out enrollment in the first trial of a phase 2 program. It's a phase 1/2 program for Gedeptin among patients with advanced head and neck cancers. The phase 1 data, which were reported a few years ago, along with what we've just seen coming out of that, well, the combined information we've gathered, will be issuing a report in the near term. But essentially what we are seeing is sufficient data and evidence to certainly acknowledge that the technology appears to be very safe for these people at very poor health situations. But even more importantly, we're seeing sufficient activity against the tumors, of stabilization, in some cases actually reduction of the tumors, that we anticipate announcing in the not too distant future our plans to go forward with an expanded phase 2 program, which we will also meet with the FDA to discuss the opportunity or the aspects that might lead to an expedited registration pathway there. So our cancer therapy program behind Gedeptin continues to advance successfully, while our next generation vaccine against COVID-19, especially with the announcement of the recent BARDA award, is going to be going in an igniting manner going forward. So those are the major parameters that we have announced. We did address within the recent update that the announcements we have made over the last year about our plans to move forward and be the first U.S.-based supplier of a vaccine against mpox and smallpox, otherwise monkeypox and smallpox, that is continuing to proceed. Right now, worldwide, there is a single supplier worldwide of the vaccine that prevents mpox, which also prevents smallpox. That is a non-U.S. based supplier. We all are concerned about being reliant upon outside the U.S. sources, not only for drug product, but also for final product. And so we acquired the rights from the NIH a few years ago to be able to develop the first U.S.-based vaccine against Mpox, which would also be stockpiled for smallpox. That continues to proceed, and we still anticipate that we will be the first U.S.-based supplier with that vaccine, and that continues to proceed. And hopefully yet this year we'll be able to give some further updates in that regard. So there's a lot of activity going on right now within GeoVax. We're all very excited, busier than we've ever been, but we're delighted to have this opportunity to be able to update not only existing shareholders, but potential investors in our stock.
That's fantastic. Lots of great updates. Let's go back a little bit. The announcements of the BARDA project, Next Gen COVID-19 vaccine. So what exactly does this award include, and why should investors care about COVID-19 vaccines at this stage?
Well, it's an excellent question. The award covers all elements necessary for the conduct of this clinical trial. It's broken down into two large pieces. There is an element of $24 to $45 million. There's a built-in range, so if other things come up that make sense that we ought to be doing, and we've already included some of those, the government's already signed off on some of those, so we can move it from 24 million up to 45 million. So that covers our regulatory costs, it covers our assays behind the T cells, the things that are unique to our vaccine, and also elements in support of the manufacturing of the product. The biggest cost of such a program is really the CRO cost, the conduct of the clinical trial. Remember, 10,000 patients, a large trial. There will be over 100 sites in this trial. Our CRO is being funded directly on our behalf by BARDA, and that represents $343 million. So combined, we're looking at a funding award in support of our COVID-19 next generation vaccine of $367 to $388 million in support of moving that program into the clinic and completing it. Obviously, as quickly as we can get patients enrolled, we can then move forward towards the completion stage. We think that will require at least 2 years of work, is what we and BARDA have, and the CRO believe it will take. But we're already in the process of moving that forward. As I mentioned, it was just a month ago today that we and BARDA made the announcement. We've already, in advance of that announcement, been producing product in support of the program. The CRO has been looking at and registering sites. So we expect over 100 sites in this program, but things are already well underway, both from the manufacturing of the product and in the process to bring patients in and to be able to announce in the early part of 2025 the actual patient initiation into this trial. Now, why should patients, let me just mention, you had answered, and I realized I hadn't addressed, you had asked, why should people be concerned about COVID today? Well, first of all, we know that we continue to see emergence of variants, and we continue to see people at risk. And certainly the news of just the last day and it underscores the importance of staying abreast relative to COVID. This virus, SARS-CoV-2, continues to evolve, to mutate. We're talking about the flirt variants now, so we're not flirting around with COVID. In other words, a little pun there. But what we are focused on is being able to provide new generation of COVID-19 vaccines that will not only give a greater breadth of protection, such as we've been demonstrating in the clinic thus far, capturing variants even before they emerge and become predominant, but also lasting longer. And that last part is critical because the public has gotten so frustrated in terms of having to go back every 2 to 4 or maybe 6 months at best to get another booster. And what we've designed is a vaccine that we think will give a much greater breadth of coverage across variants. It's been demonstrating that thus far in the clinic, and also lasting. Our goal is to get as close to at least a year without having to go back and be revaccinated. That's what we're focused on.
And from the investor's perspective, talk about how should investors evaluate the impact of this award on GeoVax and the outlook for the company for the rest of the year in 2025.
Well, the outlook is that we have several upcoming milestones of our existing trials. We announced last September the completion of enrollment in a healthy volunteer trial where we're evaluating our vaccine as an improved booster on top of mRNA. And so people have been already vaccinated with mRNA, and so is there a better way to give them a booster that will last longer? The results of that trial will be rolled out in fourth quarter of this year. The completion of the last patient will be in September, and then we'll be reporting results, between the end of September and year end. So we're looking forward to that announcement. We recently reported the initial data from that trial, and it was very positive. So we're looking forward to reporting on that trial. We also have the trial among the chronic lymphocytic leukemia patients that is coming out. That has a built-in interim review when there are 28 patients that have been enrolled. The 28th patient was recently enrolled. So we follow those patients for 112 days before we break the code and look and see what the data suggests. And in that trial, we're doing a direct randomized comparison of our vaccine versus the Pfizer vaccine, and we're evaluating it as a booster. So all patients in that trial have received an mRNA as their initial vaccine, then half receive ours as a booster, the other half receives the Pfizer as a booster. And those results will also be reported, the interim results in the before year end. So we're looking forward to reporting those types of data regarding this vaccine. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, will be providing an update sooner rather than later on what we have learned from the phase 1 study and the recently completed phase 1/2 study with Gedeptin, and what our plans are going forward for an expanded phase 2 program. So those will be the major reports that we'll be issuing yet this year. So I think that investors should be looking at that a number of milestones are coming up, some of which we believe could become the basis for expedited regulatory pathways. And that would be very exciting because that moves us quicker to revenue generation and moving into a new realm as a corporation. And we're looking forward to that. And we'll be having discussions with regulatory authorities in that regard. And we'll provide updates as we gather more information through those interactions. So I think between now, over the remainder of the year, there's going to be discrete, concrete data milestones that will help investors and potential investors reevaluate, hopefully become even more interested in becoming part of the investment group behind GeoVax. But also, it's already, the BART award is already, as you might imagine, opened up the knockings on the door about people wanting to potentially partner, collaborate with us, work with us in some way with our COVID-19 vaccine, because we hold worldwide rights. Our plan is to develop that product for commercialization on a global basis. And as we go through those types of inquiries, we also are seeing greater increase in interest related to Gedeptin. Because again, we hold worldwide rights for all indications for the Gedeptin therapy. Solid tumors are a real challenge. They require a lot of different approaches. And we believe that this gene-directed prodrug therapy behind Gedeptin, as monotherapy, as well as in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitors, can become a very important clinical tool to improve people's lives and be very valuable from a business commercial standpoint.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about Gedeptin. So at the end of 23, you announced the closing of patient enrollment in phase 1/2 trial of Gedeptin as therapy against advanced head and neck cancer. So remind us of the Gedeptin technology and what we can expect regarding some milestones for the remainder of the year.
Sure, I think that's very good. I was just wanting to circle back here on, let's see, let me go to a Gedeptin slide. I have one right here, which would be very good. All right. So with Gedeptin, my slides are not cooperating, but I will get there. Here it is. Okay, so with Gedeptin, any solid tumor that is needle accessible is a candidate for Gedeptin therapy. Our initial indication is for advanced head and neck cancers. Put that in perspective, there are around 87,000 diagnoses every year of head and neck cancer. unfortunately, about 16,000 people fail on all type of therapy and they die each year. That is our initial target population. We've received orphan drug status for that population of the application of this therapy. And we've also received funding and support for the current trial that we recently closed. The phase 1/2 trial was actually funded by the FDA under their Orphan Drugs Clinical Trials Program. The mechanism of action for Gedeptin is relatively straightforward, is that we inject into a targeted tumor a PMP enzyme, which then produces the cells in that tumor. We follow that with an infusion of an established FDA-approved hematologic agent. It's actually our chemotherapeutic agent that does nothing by itself against solid tumors. However, when it encounters the enzyme that is delivered into the tumors, the Gedeptin technology, it converts through a prodrug activity into a new compound called fluoroadenine. The name is irrelevant really here, but it converts to a compound that has very high unprecedented level of killing solid tumors. And it destroys those tumors. And it's agnostic as long as it's a solid tumor that's been treated, and then you infuse the patient with Fludara, then you have this mechanism of action that occurs. What it has demonstrated in both preclinical and then in the clinical data is that it is extremely safe, and it also is able to either stabilize or reduce the tumor activities. Last July at the American Association of Cancer Research and Association for Head and Neck Society, at their annual meeting, which was in Montreal, we presented the data that I'm showing right now from this poster presentation, which demonstrated the benefit and the utility as well as the safety of Gedeptin among these population. And this is from the study that we've just recently closed and upon which we'll soon be reporting, next steps, plans and all. What our next steps are is to more than likely continue with an expanded phase 2 trial, probably around 50 or so patients that we'll look at among patients who have advanced head and neck cancer. And the reason why is there's a major medical need there. We believe there's an opportunity for an expedited regulatory development pathway among that population. But then we will also look beyond head and neck cancer into earlier stage head and neck cancer and other monotherapies. But we're generating, with our support through preclinical work, some very exciting data that we hope to be going forward with the preparation and filing of an IND of combination therapy of Gedeptin in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitors. What we've seen in the animal models is that combining Gedeptin and an ICI is much better than either one of those individually, and it has a synergistic, expansive, positive effect of what you otherwise would see. And so we're wanting to, we're planning to move forward with that in the clinic. This, again, I'll underscore, we plan to develop this on a global basis in conjunction with partners. And it was nice that with the announcement a month ago about the BARDA award, it just sort of raised the awareness of what we're doing at GeoVax. And we're spending a good bit of time interacting with potential collaborators and maybe potential partners in both areas of related to the COVID-19, but especially related to Gedeptin. There's a lot of interest and need for such a product out there.
And how broadly do you anticipate Gedeptin to be utilized against solid tumors? And when might we learn of further such development plans?
We expect that as we're looking at and having discussions with people in a breadth of areas for the utilization of Gedeptin, could be in triple negative breast cancer. There was an earlier slide, I'll just point out here, that there are any host of these areas that we've looked at and we've spoken to with oncologists, with our oncology advisors. And as you can see, not only the head and neck cancers, but earlier stage head and neck, breast cancers, prostate, colon. We see that as a very broad opportunity to develop that. And I think you'll be hearing more updates in terms of our plans going forward with Gedeptin before the end of this year.
And so let's shift to another announcement. Plans to develop a vaccine against monkeypox and smallpox. It's GOMVA. Tell us about this, including when we might hear of this progress and what it means for investors.
Yeah, this is very exciting for us. As many people are not aware of this, and in fact, we recently, one of our colleagues here at work was part of a group that met with legislators, senators, and representatives in Washington, D.C. And it's amazing that everybody knows and has heard about mpox or monkeypox, but what people are not aware of is that currently there is a single supplier worldwide. It's a non-U.S. based supplier that supplies all the product that is utilized in the vaccine against both mpox and smallpox. It's the same vaccine, but they do not have the abilities to meet worldwide need. When we had the outbreak 2 years ago, we had to utilize the strategic national stockpile in the U.S. of the vaccine against smallpox, because that's the same one, and it went down to only 7,000 doses remaining, I'm told. So we need to do better, and we should not be dependent on foreign entities to supply such critically needed vaccines. So we acquired the rights from NIH about a year and a half or so ago to be able to go forward with our own vaccine in that. And the reason why is the vaccine, which is known as MVA, is the technology, but we also use that same vaccine as the basis for all of our infectious disease vaccines, including our COVID-19 next generation vaccine. So we are in the throes right now of moving that product forward into a registration clinical development stage. We'll be updating and providing updates yet this year on this, but what we believe we'll be able to do is to move forward in somewhat of an expedited manner, because there is such a need, and we've been demonstrating, we've already produced product, GMP product in support of this program, and we believe that we will be the first U.S.-based supplier, and that this, in fact, could end up being our first product to generate revenue for us. This may be the fastest product that we're able to commercialize because the unique nature of the vaccine and where we already are with that.
And so provide us with what all this might mean. It's a lot relative to potential amount of annual revenue value, when we might anticipate seeing any of your programs enter commercialization. As a small company, how do you plan to successfully commercialize and distribute products within whatever geographic markets you pursue?
Well, it's an excellent question. We expect to fully expect, because we have worldwide rights. We're developing Gedeptin, we're developing CMO4S1, our COVID-19 vaccine, and GeoMVA. All of those will be focused on developing for worldwide registration and distribution and utilization. If you look at the value, just the value in the U.S. alone of what we've been talking about, so GEO CMO4S1, the COVID-19 vaccine, just focused alone on those people who have compromised immune systems, the potential of that market, not as a sales forecast, but that's $15 billion in the U.S. alone. So if you look at it worldwide, there are over 400 million people who fit in that category. So it's tremendous. If you look at Gedeptin, advanced head and neck cancer is almost $3 billion as the value of the medical need today in and of itself. If we just look at the earlier stage head and neck cancer, we're now adding to that another 12.4. So now we're talking about 15 billion just with Gedeptin in head and neck cancer. And if we look at the smallpox, if we look at GEO-MVA in the U.S. alone, it's $9+ billion. In total, we are operating in a U.S. valued group of markets that are approximately $40 billion in potential. Now, we don't think that would be a sales forecast at all, but we do think we would be able to, if our product works out, CMO4S1, we'll capture the majority of what is among immunocompromised patient needs for COVID-19, and that's that $15 billion. We think we can take a big chunk out of the head and neck cancer realm. That's another potential of $15 billion. And if we're able to move forward with our successfully, which we think we will be able to, and probably sooner rather than later, with our MVA as a standalone vaccine, we're talking there of taking a chunk out of what is currently a monopoly for one company, and it's valued at $9+ billion. So we're looking at some significant valuation over the next 3 to 5 years that could come in for GeoVax. So we're at that cusp. It's a watershed moment. And again, I would underscore and emphasize that the recent BARDA announcement, if it did anything especially well, it validated what we have going on in GeoVax, not only related to COVID-19, but as a company that's really a game changer, changing the paradigm of how we look at treating and preventing various types of diseases, and also as an investment opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, David, we are out of time. This was a very thorough and exciting presentation. Thank you so much for all this information, and we would love to have you back with some more updates in the future.
Thank you. We look forward to it. We appreciate the opportunity.
All right, everyone, stay with us. We'll be right back.